Please turn to page 101 for informative explanatory writing organizers. In this manual, you will find that there are 2 chapters dedicated to informative explanatory writing. The first chapter that we're going to go through right now will only deal with the organizers for this type of writing. You will notice that it says introduction, body, conclusion. This is your basic format of informational text. And I have a wonderful way to remember these 3 parts of informational text that will always be there when you're writing. In order to remember the 3 parts of informational explanatory text, I have a wonderful tactile kinesthetic method that you can show the children that there are 3 basic parts to informational writing. You need an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. What are the 3 parts? Introduction, body, and a conclusion. Notice here where I have introduction, body, and conclusion, I'm going to draw a stick person. And that stick person you can use to remind students what the 3 parts of informative explanatory writing are. And that is, you have your introduction, then you have your body, and finally at the bottom we'll put a big shoe and put a C for conclusion. Now that we know informative explanatory writing will always have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, we also need to know, let's put a little box here, what are in each one of those parts. So here I have a piece of paper, and I have a skinny box at the top, a fat box in the middle, and a skinny box at the bottom. This is the organizer that we will use at your grade levels to teach informative explanatory writing. The top part is for the introduction, and in the introduction, notice there could be a hook and a big idea. So over here I'm going to draw a hook, and then I'm going to put SS lightbulb, and we'll talk about what that means. That's our secret formula for the big idea. In the middle is the body of the information, and that's where we're going to write 6 organizers. Because there are 6 different organizers that you will learn about, which are basically the 6 different text structures that children need to understand in order to organize their information. Whenever you're writing, you always need to come up with the big idea, then you choose one of the 6 organizers in order to organize the information to tell about the big idea. And finally on the bottom, we have our conclusion. And our conclusion is going to repeat the big idea and have a snappy ending. So I'm going to have a secret formula, S lightbulb, for our conclusion. And again, we'll go through what that means in a moment. And then we're going to put an asterisk there for our snappy ending. That's why does this information matter? What's the importance of it? This is our basic organization of our informational writing. On the opposing page, we want to have a quick overview of these 3 parts just before we go in to look at each one of those organizers for the middle. At the top part of our page, let's put our line for the big idea, SS lightbulb. The number 1 thing that we need to know when we are reading or writing informational text is, what's the big idea? What is all this information about? So I have a secret formula for that because many children have a difficult time coming up with a big idea. I could say, tell us the real important information. Who or what is it about? What about it? Why is it important? Do I need to put a how information in there, or a when or a where? Too many questions. That becomes too complicated. So what I did was I created the secret formula, SS lightbulb. SS lightbulb is the secret formula that the children learn in order to put in their big idea what's critical that the reader needs to know. What is all this information about? So that's how you start your paper with that big idea. The first S is for setting. Setting is going to tell us time and place. Right above setting, put in parentheses, optional. The reason why we're putting optional is there may not be a setting. If I'm writing about George Washington, then I probably need a setting. I probably need to tell you the time and the place. But if I was writing about a molecule, I probably don't need a setting, so I won't put that information there. So setting is always optional. It's, do we need to know that information in our big idea? So far we have the setting. Setting, time and place. We're going to point to our wrist like there's a watch. The time when the information occurred, and also the place. Where did this information occur? Does our reader need to know that? The second S is always going to be present, and that's the subject. That is, who or what is the information about? We're going to hold our hands together like it's a textbook. Open it up and say, who or what is this information about? And we're only going to say that. So if I was telling information about butterflies, my subject is butterflies. Who or what am I telling you about? Plants. Who or what am I telling you about? Rocks. Notice I'm just giving you the subject. I'm not telling you anything else. The light bulb is for what's the big idea? And who cares? Why is it so important? So the light bulb has two parts. First, there's the big idea. And then there's the why is this so important? I may have subject plants. What's the big idea about plants? What information am I telling you about plants? This is the critical piece. This is the purpose of why we're writing this information. So I may say plants. Oh, I'm going to tell about the different parts of a plant. Why? Who cares? Because a plant's going to use those parts in order to live, to survive. There's my big idea. What if I had who or what is the information about plants again, but this time I say, what's the big idea about plants? What information will you tell me about plants? Oh, I'm going to tell you about the different things a plant needs in order to survive. So now I know the big idea is the different things it needs. Why? So it can survive. Notice we've gone in a completely different direction. The big idea will tell us the purpose of this information. After we look at the big idea, then we understand purpose is really important in information. So I want you on this page to write the word idea right down the side of your page. And the reason why we're going to write idea is this is a wonderful anachronism for you to use to remember the purpose of information. If the information up here is to inform, that means that we're going to tell about the subject. When you tell about the subject, that means that you are going to organize the information into categories. So we have our purpose. We're going to inform about plants, tell about plants. How are we going to organize the information when we're going to tell about or inform our reader about plants? We're going to sort the information into categories, into separate parts. So I may tell you plants. What's the big idea? I'm going to tell you about all the things a plant needs in order to survive. My information then will be organized into categories, the things a plant needs to survive. Sun, soil, water, all those different things. Let's go to the next letter for the purpose of information. D is for describe. Describe is when you are typically looking at the subject and you know your reader doesn't have much knowledge or background in that subject. And they really won't understand any more information unless they can see it, see all the parts of whatever the subject is, and you're giving background and a description of this subject. So what does that mean when you describe your subject? That means that you're choosing to describe it because your reader will not understand the information unless they see the subject. They understand what the subject looks like. They understand how the subject works, the function of all its parts. That's why we do a description. So let me give you an example. Let's go back up to our big idea. Who or what are we talking about? A plant. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe the plant to you. If my purpose is to describe, then I'm going to do just that. I am going to give a description of a plant, meaning I will describe all the parts of the plant. There's the description piece, a description of all the parts of the plant, but I will also tell the function of those parts. I will not only describe the roots of a plant, what they look like, so the reader will understand, oh, that's what the roots look like, but I will also include the function of them, how they will pull up water, drink the water in the ground, how they will anchor the plant to the soil so it doesn't blow away. That's the function piece. So when you are deciding on a description, it's because your reader needs to know about the subject. They need to be able to visualize the subject, have a complete description of that subject, all its parts, but also include the function of those parts. And you truly have a description. Let's go to the next letter, and that's the letter E. E is when your purpose is to explain the information. When you explain the information, then you're going to organize it in a sequence, in some sort of an order. So if I went back up to my big idea and I said to you, who or what is my information about? Plants. What's the big idea about plants? Plants go through a life cycle. Who cares? Why do I need to know that? Well, a life cycle proves it's a living thing. So plants go through a life cycle that proves it's a living thing. At that point, the big idea is telling us that we are talking about the life cycle. So what's the purpose here? To explain the life cycle, to go through and sequence or put the information in a specific order as I tell you about its life cycle. So notice so far, when we look at the big idea and we understand what the information is about, it's much easier to figure out how to organize it, whether it's categories, a description, or a sequence. These three, IDE, inform, describe, and explain, are your top three organizers. These are the three that you need your children to master. The next purpose is to analyze. Three different organizers here. The purpose to analyze information is a much deeper type of thinking. One will be cause and effect, and the whole purpose of cause and effect is to explain change. So when your information is about how something changed, a condition changed, an event happened, which shows change, then you're using cause and effect. The other two are compare and contrast. I separate those out because you're either doing one or the other. I'm either comparing two or more things or I'm contrasting two or more things. And when I compare or contrast, the purpose for either one is to explain why. Explain why. That is the purpose for either one. What we're looking at is categories, description, and sequence need to be mastered by your students. Analyze, where you use cause and effect, compare and contrast, we are using those types of organizers for deeper level thinking. Let's turn to the next page. We will draw out the 6 text structures. But before we go there, I want to walk you through this chapter so that you can see how all the different text structures and parts of informative explanatory text have been put together in this chapter so you can use it as a reference. Now let's go through this chapter so I can show you all the different pages and the organizers. Let's turn to the next page. Are 2 pages that you can lay out side by side as at-a-glance charts for you and your students to review when they need to decide which organizer to use. Categories, description, sequence, cause and effect, compare, contrast. Next to each organizer, you will also see keywords. These are signpost words and many times transition words that lend themselves to the different types of writing. You also will see that it will give some sort of a definition of what that type of writing is. So let's go to the first one just so that we see. If I'm looking at categories, what's my purpose? To inform, and then I have my definition. Categories or sort information into parts, types, kinds, things, ways, or attributes. What are key words that I may be using as I write this type of information? So you have different key words here, and those can be transitions or signpost words. And then finally, this is what the organizer would look like, and that organizer is just the body of the paper. Up above it and down below is actually going to be your SS light bulb and your S light bulb, where you'll have your introduction, your topic sentence, body, and then down here would be a conclusion. I'm only showing the organizers on this page, what needs to go in the body. You will also see in these boxes hand signals. These are nifty little hand signals that I created to help your students understand and remember the purpose and how to use the different organizers. Let's turn to the next page. Is another at-a-glance sheet. It shows what's the big idea with the SS light bulb, and then the body, the different organizers you can choose from. It actually shows the organizer, the hand signal, and then you will see examples of different types of information that could be used on that organizer. For example, let's jump down to sequence. Here's our sequence organizer for the body. Here's our hand signal. And down here, how to plant a seed or the life cycle of a seed, etc. You'll see all the different ways that you may be sequencing information, and it just gives you examples of that. On the bottom are cause and effect, compare, and contrast organizers and their purpose with hand signs. All the pages that follow will go into detail about every single part of the informational text on this page. The steps and the understanding of using SS light bulb are for you to go back and use as a reference if necessary. Let's turn to the next page. The 6 text structures you have to choose from in order to organize the information about the big idea. So this is just showing you each one of these text structures. This whole page is dedicated to the categories organizer. Information about all the different ways that you can categorize information. You can organize information by types, like the different types of flowers. Or you can organize information by their characteristics or features. So the colors or the sizes. Or things, you can organize by things, or you can organize by ways. These are different ways to take information and sort it into categories. Below is that at-a-glance chart. Here's your hand signal, here's the organizer, and then also a definition of what the categories organizer is. Notice the top part, same organizer. It has the top skinny part, the body, and the bottom part. The top and the bottom will always be the same. The top has the SS light bulb, the bottom has the S light bulb, but the middle is the categories organizer, where we're categorizing the information into parts, into these different segments or groups. Let's turn to the next page. You have the description organizer, background information about how to use it, then the at-a-glance visual of the hand sign, what is a descriptive organizer, and what it looks like. Now, I'm just going to show you really quickly here. Notice this is our intro, our topic sentence, but it looks different. And our conclusion, it still has the conclusion section, but it's different. In a description, the topic sentence is going to be a definition. So let's say that I was writing about a desert animal, a bird, the roadrunner. And I know my reader needs a description of this. They need to see what the roadrunner looks like and the function of its parts. At that point, I know I need a description organizer, but my topic sentence, because it's a description, is going to be a definition. I have to first introduce to my reader basically what is a roadrunner. A roadrunner is a desert bird. Once I have the definition there, then in the middle, the body, I will draw a picture, label the parts, and then also tell the function of the parts. Finally ending with a definition, which is a restatement that it's a desert bird using different words. On the following page is the sequence organizer. On this page, you will see all the ways that you can sequence information. When sequencing information, there's many different ways that you sequence. So let's look at the 5 different ways. Number 1 is how to catch a frog, how to plant a seed. I need to sequence all the different information in order to tell you how to do something. Number 2 can almost be an overlap of number 1, and that is the steps. For instance, the steps to build a bicycle, the steps to make orange juice, the steps to make an aquarium. So if you notice, number 1 and 2 are very similar. Number 1 is mostly about an action, how to do something, while number 2 is when you're actually going to make something. But they both need the information put in order. Number 3 is a cycle or process. A cycle or process can be like the cycle of the seasons, or a life cycle of a frog or a plant. A cycle or a process still is information that needs to be put in a sequence. It needs to go in order. Our next way is an event. Events need to be put in order. If I was telling you about something that happened on a summer vacation day, or the typical day in the life of a frog, or the field trip to the zoo, all that information needs to be sequenced and put in order. And finally, the last one, when you are telling the important parts of a story, the summary of a novel, a short story, a play, anything that had a beginning, middle, and end in that narrative sense, when you summarize it, you are actually writing information. You are telling about the most important parts of the beginning, the middle, and the end. You are no longer writing a story. You are sequencing what happened in that story, in that play. So a sequence has many different reasons why you need to put the information in order. Again, this is a reference page for you to go to, so when you need more information, more detailed, so you can understand more about the sequence and all the different ways to sequence and put information in order. And on the bottom, our hand sign and the organizer. We'll learn those in a moment. These last 2 pages deal with analysis, when you analyze the information. This is a reference page for you to go to so that you can see what is the purpose of cause and effect. What is the purpose of a compare or a contrast? You will see you have the hand signals, the organizers on these pages so that you can have this as a reference of what is the text structure, what's the purpose of it. Quick reference for you so that you understand what cause and effect is, compare and contrast. Let's turn to the next page. Are the 6 different organizers for you to have as more of an at-a-glance reference to identify the different types of organizers, the hand signals, and the background. What is the purpose of each one of these different ways of organizing the information? These pages include the big idea, the body, and the conclusion for every single organizer. Once you understand all 6 text structures, these are probably going to be the 2 pages that you go to constantly to decide which one you will use when you are writing. Turn back to pages 102, 103. On these 2 pages, we will draw out all 6 organizers, and I will teach you the different hand signs that go with the organizers. I've already shown you in this chapter how you have reference pages for each one of the text structures. Let's start with the first 3. Let's separate these 2 pages out so that you have 3 sections. Make a box, 2 lines. This is our informational organizer, but we need to make it into the categories organizer. So to make it into the categories organizer, I need SS light bulb, and then I need to draw boxes in the body, and the boxes will always depend on how many categories I need. Maybe I needed to group the information into 4 parts, or 3 parts, or 2. It really just depends. And then the bottom section is S light bulb. That's the conclusion. So on this organizer, I have my SS light bulb. I may be writing about plants and how plants need many things to survive. That's my big idea, my SS light bulb. But now below are the categories. So I need to figure out how many categories. Let me show you my hand sign for categories. We have whole to part. So categories, what are categories? When I'm taking the whole. And what am I doing? I'm breaking it into parts. I have to organize the information into parts. I'm going to put a finger down for each part that I need to tell about the whole. So plants need many different things to survive. Now let's figure out how many different things they need. They need soil, water, CO2, sunshine. So now I have 4 fingers. So that means I need 4 boxes. The fingers are going to decide how many boxes. So when we have categories, what do we have? Always SS light bulb on the top S light bulb on the bottom for my topic, sentence, and conclusion, and the body is going to be organized into parts, boxes that will tell me these are the different details that I need to tell about the information. Let's do the hand signal. Categories, whole to part. Go to the next box, and we have, again, you have your sheet of paper, this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, turned in the landscape position, draw a line across the top and the bottom. SS light bulb in the top, S light bulb in the bottom. So we have, again, what's the same as our other organizer, the introduction and the conclusion. But what's different? Sequencing information. So we need the sequence organizer. The sequence organizer will always have 3 boxes. Now let me show you what goes in each one of those boxes by using my hand signal. So again, notice what the hand signals do. When I had categories, I had whole to parts. The hand signal told you how many boxes I needed. The sequencing is going to tell you how to fill in the sequencing organizer. Here's the hand signal. You put a hand up and you go like this: beginning, end, what happened in the middle. So we go to our organizer, and how is this organizer going to be labeled? There's going to be a beginning, there's going to be the middle, and there's going to be an ending box. How do we fill out the organizer? The first box that we fill out is the beginning, so we'll label what's going to happen in the beginning. Then we will go to the end and label the end. After we've labeled the beginning and the end, we will label what happens in the middle. This is a wonderful technique that you can show children, because when they are sequencing information, many times they get confused and they go out of order. And part of sequencing is having a conscious understanding of here's my beginning and there's my end. Once I know my ending, then I can sequence to get there. So if you label the beginning, label the end, then you'll be able to sequence the middle and you'll stay right on topic and in order. We have our beginning, middle, end. We know from our hand signal, label the beginning, label the end, then label the middle. The next organizer, let's put our box here, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Draw a line across the top, a line across the bottom. This one is our description organizer. Our description organizer is the only one that has a different topic, sentence, and conclusion. We're going to put equal signs here, because this will be a definition. You're going to take your subject and then you're going to have a definition of what that subject is before you go to the body and you describe and tell the function of that subject. At the bottom, we're going to repeat that definition, but we're going to do it in different words. So put your equal sign there so that you know that you have that as your conclusion. Our hand signal will show you how to fill in the body of the description. You put out a hand and you show the kids. Draw a picture of the subject, label the parts, describe the parts, and this is supposed to be like the fancy words, then tell the function of the parts. So let's go back and do our hand signal one more time. Draw a picture, label the parts, add fancy words, and tell the function of the parts. So in the middle of our organizer here, what would we do? We would draw a picture of our subject. We would label the parts. Then we would tell the function of the parts. And we would do that for the entire picture. On the next page, we're going to look at more of the analysis. This is that deep thinking that you need in order to understand the information using compare, contrast, or cause and effect. I'm going to make all 3 organizers on this page. We're going to put the top lines on and the bottom lines on each one of the pages. And they have the same exact secret formula. SS light bulb for our topic sentences or our big idea. And then the bottom is going to be S light bulb, subject, big idea. We're repeating the topic sentence using different words. Let's go to this top organizer. This will be cause and effect. The whole purpose is change. Our organizer will have two lines. The first box is going to be the before, then the middle is going to be the word change, and then the last box is the after. Our hand signal will tell you how to fill in this organizer, and that is before, my hand is fine. After, ow, my hand is killing me. Go to the middle, and then you pound your hand and you go, what caused the change? So our hand signal is before, after, what caused the change? When we're filling in our information for change, we always fill in what? Before. Then we jump to after. Now that we have the before and after, then we can identify the change. The change is when you identify what caused that after, what caused the change, what issues or events caused that change. The next two organizers are for compare and contrast. They are separated out because the whole purpose is for you to do one or the other. And the reason why you either compare or contrast two or more things is to explain why. So I may be comparing, let's say, two characters from a story. Cinderella and Cendrillon. They have differences, but their similarities explain why both were rewarded at the end of the story. Well, when I contrast, maybe I'm contrasting information I learned in science about frogs and toads. Frogs and toads have similarities, but what's my purpose here? I'm going to contrast. Why? I'm going to show that they have differences, which explains why they live in different habitats. So notice, I'm not just saying, oh, let's look why these two things are similar or why they're different. I'm using the similarities and differences to explain why. If I go back and I look at compare and I explain why Cinderella and Cendrillon had many similarities, and that's why they were rewarded. When we compare, we have to identify attributes, so I'm going to draw lines in the middle for each attribute or characteristic that I'm going to choose in order to make that comparison. Then I'm going to put a T-graph where I'm going to look at that attribute for each one of my subjects, and then I'm going to show the effect. And the same is the case for contrasting. Identify attributes, contrast your subjects under these attributes, and then show the effect of that contrast. Let me show you the hand signal. Identify the attributes. That's where we put a line for each attribute or characteristic that we're identifying to show how we're going to compare or show how we're going to contrast. Once we identify the attributes, then if we're comparing, then we're going to compare how the two subjects are similar to each other under this attribute. If we're going to contrast, then we're going to show how they're different from each other under this attribute. For the compare, attributes, compare how they're similar to each other. If it's a contrast, identify the attributes, contrast how they're different from each other. And finally, once you either compare or contrast, then you're going to show the effect. Here's our hand signal for compare. Compare is attributes, compare, show the effect. For contrast, it's label the attributes, contrast, show the effect. We have all 6 organizers. Now that you've had some background with these organizers, you will be able to teach them with more ease with your students.